My guest today is Scott Kumler, an Arizona team leader who's built one of the most productive organizations in the state. He started as an agent grinding in open houses and built a business that never once had a down year. After growing from 3 agents to 55 agents in just 2 years, his team increased 88% in transactions and 140% in sales volume, selling 192 homes and over 80 million in the last year. That is super impressive. Scott joined EXP and the Wolfpack after his mentor Josh Smith made the move, but more importantly, he figured out how to structure his own team so every agent could build wealth, not just production. And Scott, thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited to have you and hear all about your business and what you've done up there. So this is great.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate having me. I'm definitely excited to hopefully share whatever value I have that your listeners can kind of take back and implement on their own.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that. And so we're going to dive in, and I have, a few questions, and thank you so much for sharing, because I'm super excited for this. So you've built an $80 million team that's never had a down year. What's been the key mindset or the systems that have kept you growing year after year along with your agents?
Yeah, so I would say the most important thing is consistency. I always say mindset matters more than anything else, and even when it comes to lead sources, right? Whether you think lead source is great or whether you think lead source sucks, you're probably right. And so at the end of the day, the mindset and consistency is really important. I typically, detach myself from the outcome and attach myself to the process. So when it kind of gets back to, for example, when I first got into real estate, I was just consistent with my activities, and so I kind of created a schedule for myself, as a brand new real estate agent. I used to work about 60 hours a week salary for a retail management or for a grocery chain as an assistant store director. And so I didn't mind working 60, it's working a lot of hours. I was tired of working 60 hours when someone else told me I needed to work,
Right.
weekends, holidays, and all that stuff. And so ultimately, when I first got into real estate, I just kind of created a schedule for myself where I'm like, hey, I'll work about 30 to 40 hours a week. So for me, it was open houses. I did 22 open houses my first 25 days in real estate. And I had 5 open houses a week every single week for 6 months. And then I started kind of getting some business from that. I got my first transaction after about 4 months. Then by about month 6, I closed 8 homes, in my first 6 months. And so then I just kind of created that schedule. And then what I ended up doing was I ended up kind of scaling back every single year, but I was consistent no matter what. So for example, I started getting really busy. My first full year in real estate, I scaled it back to 3 open houses a week every single week. My second full year, I scaled it back to 2 open houses a week every single week. But I never missed a day, And so a lot of times in this industry, people make excuses on why they can't perform the activity, stuff like that. I got to the point where I was selling 50 homes a year, but I still never had to miss an open house, because I was able to manage my schedule and stay consistent with my activity. And because of that, my business kept continuing to grow. So I'm just super systematic. And so that was kind of the way, now the way I kind of run my team too is very systematic. And so it just kind of runs itself, and then obviously I do a lot of different things with it. But it just kind of takes away the brain work, and you just basically kind of stick to the same activities every single day, no matter what the outcome is.
Okay, that's great, and I agree. A lot of agents get into the business because I was one of them. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'm like, oh, I get to be my own boss, and I could potentially make a lot of money, but you don't realize all of the work that you have to put in. And I was the same. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week for somebody else, telling me I had to be there at a certain time. I mean, I had to be at work at 4 a.m., which was really tough, especially after I had my daughter. So I think it's great that you share that it's just as much work, but it's the work that you're choosing to do. And in real estate, it could be so many different avenues, right? Yours is open houses, mine was cold calling. But it works if you are consistent. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah, I will say too, also, one of the things that we don't talk about enough in real estate is the time investment, right? People know about money investment when it comes to businesses,
Yes.
but there's a factor of having the time investment when it comes to real estate too, that people don't think about, right? Because imagine going to a job, let's say you get hired at a job, and then your boss tells you, hey, I need you to come into work. I need you to work 40 hours a week every single week, and maybe in 4 months you'll get a paycheck, but there's no guarantee. I'm hoping one day I can give you a paycheck, right? Most of the time you're gonna tell your boss, I'm not going to come to work and work 40 hours a week, right? But that's what it takes to be successful in real estate. That's what people don't realize. In order to be successful, it's a time investment, and it's about trusting the process. And so for me, when I started doing some open houses, I trusted the process, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this every single week, no matter what the outcome was, and then eventually start snowballing downhill. This probably from YouTube. Our mentor obviously teaches and trains on YouTube, right? A lot of times it takes consistent activity with YouTube, and then eventually after a year, you might start receiving paychecks from that work that you've been doing. But so that's important for anyone that's thinking about getting into real estate, is you have to understand there's a time investment up front so you start seeing that success. But as long as you trust the process, eventually you'll start becoming really successful. So that's, I think, a huge takeaway from that.
Absolutely. And so you now lead 55 agents and run a Zillow Flex team. What are the biggest lessons you've learned about scaling people, not just production?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to that, right? So obviously, no one's going to care about your business as much as you do, and so obviously, I've cared a lot over my career, and obviously, this is my livelihood, it's my wife's livelihood, and so one thing that's, I think, very important is to have structure, that your agents can plug into. Most of the time, people don't realize what it takes to be successful in this industry, and so as a team leader, it's your job to have the type of structure that an agent needs, because they're not going to go out there and do it on their own. And so for us, there's a couple things that we've done. First is our onboarding process. We plug all of our agents into our onboarding process. It's a day-by-day process that tells you exactly what to do, exactly about videos to watch. There's also role-playing and activities along the way. Like, for example, one of the things that we learned when I first got into real estate is I would give our agents a training program, and then they would all say they watched it, but I don't think they really watched it. They just said they did. They weren't either that or they weren't really paying attention. And so what we do is we have the training, but then we also have activities that are associated with some of that training as well too, that they have to complete. So for example, I have a sales manager on my team. And so for example, we do the buyer consultation training. And once our agents are done with the buyer consultation training, they then have to role play the buyer consultation with my sales manager, Doug. Same thing in a listing presentation. They have to do listing presentation training. Then they have to role play the listing presentation with my sales manager, Doug. And so I think that structure is very important, because that way, especially as a team, we start giving leads, we need to make sure that they're prepared for those leads. Otherwise, a lot of times people will say they are, but they really aren't. And so that's important, that structure. And then accountability.
Yeah.
When you get into real estate, one of the hardest things for real estate agents to do is to be their own boss. When you have a boss, you typically have to, punch a clock. And then, if you don't, if you don't show up on time or whatever, you're not going to get paid, right? Well, in real estate, you're your own boss. And so it's super hard. And so as a team, in order to keep our agents on track, we typically have to have some sort of accountability mechanisms too, and set standards. So we're very clear on all of our standards as a team, whether it's a conversion standard, whether it's, CRM usage, all that stuff, and that determines how many leads that they'll get. And so for us, a lot of it comes down to our accountability too, whenever an agent joins our organization. But it's also very clear, so they know exactly what to expect when they first get started.
I love that. And that kind of goes into my next question, because you did join EXP because of Josh. He made the move. And so then you guys came over, and I love Josh. He's amazing. But you also restructured your team to help your agents create wealth. So what does that structure kind of look like, and how has it changed your leadership approach?
Yeah, so there's a couple things to that. So when I was with our previous brokerage, and I'm recruiting agents to join our organization, one of the common things I heard amongst newer agents was, is there anyone that I can shadow, on your team? Now, I got a lot of producing agents that are very successful, but there's no incentive for them to really have a newer agent shadow them. And on top of that, for me, you could shadow me, but I'm gonna be on Zoom all day, and it's not really going to be what you're trying to do, right? So you can't really, because I'm not really in production anymore. And so what we did when we moved to EXP is EXP obviously runs kind of like a revenue share model. And so what we did is, obviously we have our own personal upline, but then I have myself, and then right underneath me, I have all of our top producers and on our team. And our top producers then become agent leader mentors. So they kind of become leaders within the organization. And anytime we bring a new agent on board, we put them underneath one of our top producers, agent leader mentors downline. Now the newer agent has someone they can shadow, and our top producers are also incentivized to help, the newer agents, right? So it gives them that extra level of support and coaching that I can't provide. Now they still come to us with any contract questions, things of that nature. But the shadowing is the most important, because especially we're a Zillow Flex team, if someone is brand new and they want to, see how someone converts a Zillow lead into a client, they can't really follow me around, but now they can follow one of our top producers who are crushing it at another level. And so that kind of gives our top producers more revenue. as well too, because they get the revenue share from helping maybe a newer agent, but then it also gives that extra level of support for our newer agents as well too.
That's great. I think that's really important because a lot of times agents will join and then like their sponsors don't really offer support. It's like, oh, you're on your own. They get a mentor sometimes if they're brand new. But that doesn't help with the EXP systems either. So it's great that you've figured out that solution. Because it's definitely very much needed here. So that's awesome. Now your growth numbers are wild, and I love it. 88% transaction growth and 147% volume increase in just the last year. So, are there specific systems or habits that drove that kind of scale for you guys?
So I would say to me, I'm obsessed with improvement. And so meaning that I never like to see a sales volume decrease, and so to me, I'm always getting better. And I subscribe to the philosophy of like getting 1% better every single day. And so for me, that's just every single year, we always add new systems to make our agents' lives more efficient. We always, add in additional partners. I'm always looking for vendor partners to partner with, so we continue to add in more and more sources. Obviously, we add in from a team growth standpoint, we always are continuing trying to grow our team. And so to me, I think it's just that obsession. I'm a super competitive guy, so it has nothing to do with like financials or anything like that. If I'm complete transparent, I'll probably take a profit loss this year, or not lose profit, but like make less money than I did the previous year. But our sales will still increase because my obsession is just how do I help our agents sell more homes, help our agents make more money, and so that's kind of where I think that part of that comes into is just that obsessive nature of trying to get better. And so we add in a lot of different systems. Like for example, we just recently added in it's a system called House Whisper. It's kind of like an AI virtual assistant for our agents, where basically it helps them like update the CRM, put notes in there, especially if they're calling from their phone. So that's something that's important. We're always trying to increase our standards too, to kind of raise our agents' production to another level as well too. But yeah, we're always adding in like new things. We just recently had a lender partner we started partnering with where they give us leads as well too. So there's just certain things that we try to do to continue to see that improvement. And so we had that big increase last year. Obviously, we moved to EXP this year. We'll still see increase, not as much as I think we could have if we wouldn't have, obviously, whenever you make a move, sometimes there's going to be a little bit of a sales lull. But we're still going to be up over the previous year. But then next year, we should make that much of a bigger jump as well.
And because it's the long game, right? It's like where you're doing the little steps now for that futuristic, success. And I think it's very important that people know that. Even like in your case, like you said, you might not make as much this year as you did last year yourself, but your team, on the other hand, that tells a different story. So I think it's really important that agents understand that, especially if they do want to grow a team or they do want to grow a downline in some sort of way. And so for team leaders watching, what do you think separates a good leader from a great one when it comes to growth and retention?
So open communication, I feel is extremely important, for multiple reasons. Why? And it's got to be both ways, right? It's important, I think, to get feedback from your agents. Like, don't be afraid of, like ask for feedback. Don't be afraid of getting your ego hurt, because things are not going the right way, because that's how you're going to improve. So I think open communication from your agents is extremely important. Have an open door policy, being available, I think is very important. And then two, also have clear, transparent guidelines and being fair with everyone, right? Like, one of the things I hear from a lot of agents that are on teams maybe they don't like is that teams play favoritisms, and so for us, what we try to do is we typically say, okay, these are the guidelines, a set of standards. Everyone gets the same exact standards when they join the team. They know exactly how we determine lead flow and stuff like that, what the metrics are, and then the numbers determine how many leads they get. If they perform the metrics, they get more leads. If they don't, they get less leads. It's pretty simple. And so I think that clear communication is extremely important as well too. I do find that a lot of times what happens is, especially when you start getting to a point where you grow so much and you start adding in like sales managers and things of that nature, which we added a sales manager in, but I'm still 100% available. So already just so they can get a hold of me. So a lot of times they'll reach out to me and ask for help, with whatever, and I'm still available. And I think a lot of times what happens with team leaders is they will find a sales manager, and the next thing you know, they disappear and they think, oh, I don't need to do this anymore because I have a sales manager now. It takes care of all that stuff. Yeah. But as a team leader, you're still the face of the organization. You want people to know, so that's going to help with retention as long as you're available. Because because, for all you know, your sales manager may not be doing a very good job. Maybe your agents don't like them, and so, my sales manager does a lot of amazing things and he's a good sales manager, but, if you have another sales manager, he may not. So it's important to have that open dialogue with your agents. And then typically if you do that, and then you also have to build that trust too. Your agents need to know that they can trust you as a team leader,
Right.
that they can follow you, because what will happen is you'll have a mass exodus if they feel like there's no longer that trust there. So do what you're going to say, and say what you're going to do, and so, because if you do that, then, it's really, it's pretty simple to be able to at least retain your agents, but you're never always going to be able to retain agents with an organization. You can't make everyone happy, and you shouldn't, right? Because at the end of the day, if you try to make everyone happy, no one will be happy, because everyone will not respect you, because you're just not, doing the right thing for your organization as well.
Like how you are presenting how you run your team. I started out on a team and it was not a great experience. I mean, I did get good learning and I did get leads, and I got it definitely helped me with like the baseline of my business and like how I should run my business and what are the activities I should be doing. But as far as like playing favorites, absolutely. That I think that does happen a lot, not just in teams, but also in other brokerages too, especially if like a broker manager has incentive for agents doing well. But it looks like you have learned how to combat that. And that's amazing for the agents on your team and for anybody who might be interested in, joining a team or running a team, because it doesn't always have to be just about the team lead. It should be more about what you're building.
Yeah,
So,
I'll say this. I'm probably fair to a fault.
yeah.
I'm so like, I would say this. I'm so even keel that like I'm not emotional one way or another. So like I'm not like you won't see me get like super high and super like rah rah. You won't see me also be super depressed. Most people probably don't even know what I'm thinking just by looking at me. So so I'm super even keel that like I'm always like, hey, because my word is very important to me. I'd say this. My name's very important to me. So, so at the end of the day, whenever I say something, if someone thinks I'm lying to them or whatever, then that ruins my name, right? And so ultimately, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it probably to a fault, because some of our agents, maybe that feel like they should be favorites, are going to be like, hey, I've helped you out so much, it's like, well, listen, the numbers are what they are, it doesn't matter, how much I like you. I mean, I like you as a person, you're a great person, but, you're just not producing at this level. So we need to, have a adjustment here and get better. And so, but it's just, I think something that's definitely very important, within organizations, is that you can't play those favorites.
Yeah, I think that's important too. And I love that you care about that, because I've known quite a few team leads that it's more just a numbers game and they don't protect their name, and then they do get a bad reputation. So it's great that you care on both sides, because it doesn't just protect you, it also protects your agent and your team name, not just your name, but your team name. So that's wonderful. And so what advice would you give to agents who want to grow into leadership but are nervous about stepping out of production?
So I get that when it comes to being nervous about stepping out of production. I would say a couple things right now. First of all, we're very fortunate because one of the hardest things for most team leaders to do and most brokerage owners to do is provide training for their agents. And so a lot of times what happens, this is what the typical progression is a team leader be like, I want to grow a team now because I'm so busy. Then they start bringing agents on board, but they don't have the onboarding training process dialed in. Brokerages are the same way too. Most brokerages don't have like an online university or people that they can learn from, right? And so they bring people in, but there's no training process in order to get people up and running. And so if you're a high producing agent and you want to start growing a team, what I recommend doing is partnering with someone who already has a training system in place. Now, there's a couple different things you can do when it comes to that. One, you can hire a coach and pay for their training platform, right, for their team, right? I'm sure there's a lot of coaches out there that have training, different things like that. You can pay for it, and then you get access to all that training. My mentor, Joshua Smith, had that training program, that a lot of people can go ahead and plug into and pay for. Now, he doesn't necessarily do that anymore because now he's with EXP, so now everyone with EXP gets that training for free. Right. But it's very important because, like me, for example, and you want to make sure you buy it from someone who produces at a very high level. There's a lot of coaches and trainers out there that will charge you money for coaching and training their agents, but what ends up happening is they have never sold any houses. They haven't done it themselves.
Yeah.
My mentor, Joshua Smith, has sold over 7,000 homes. I think he's a good person to learn from because he's done it at a very high level, right? But so it's very important that if you're trying to buy coaching and training from someone, make sure you do get it from someone who does it at a very high level. Or you can partner with obviously our organization, we provide all the training coaching for free that people can kind of plug into. But that's what's helped me kind of grow our team because I did open houses. I could train someone how to do open houses without a problem. If someone came to me and said, hey, Scott, I want to start calling expireds, guess what I'm not going to be able to do? Train them on calling expireds. I never did that. That's not my thing. It's not my niche. YouTube, not my niche, right? So I obviously have a YouTube channel now, but I'm not like the Mike Sherrard of YouTube or anything like that, right? Like I'm not highly successful. So if someone wanted to learn from me how to create a YouTube channel, probably not the best person to learn from, right? So, but the problem is that I can train someone open houses, but there's a lot of agents that don't want to do open houses. Used to put out 30 to 40 signs in 120-degree weather during the summer. Most people are not going to want to do that. And so you want to be able to diversify your training program as well too, so that way you can help anyone no matter what their goals are, because people may change. You may bring on an agent who maybe wants to do open houses, but maybe a year from now they're like, okay, that sucks, and maybe I want to go ahead and start, a YouTube channel calling expireds. And so that's very important. Before I ended up moving over to EXP, that's one of the things I started looking at. I started looking at, okay, what coaching platforms can I pay for that I can plug my agents into, right? There's a lot of them out there, but they're expensive, and so I decided, hey, let's move over to EXP. I can give all my agents the free coaching because I got, Joshua Smith and Mike Sherrard, and I don't have to pay for it, and I can plug all my agents into it, so now they're already set up for success. So I think that's the most important thing when it comes to building a team is you want to make sure you have the right training platform, but then you also want to make sure that it's a training platform that allows you to be hands-off when it comes to the training. So
Right.
I create the structure, but I'm not physically training anyone. I have other people that do it at a very high level training my agents, right? It allows me to leverage them, because if you're a high producing agent, guess what's going to happen? If you don't have that, you're going to start training agents. Now you guys have to step back from production. Now you're not making any money at all because your agents are not producing, you're not producing, and now all of a sudden you're going broke, right? So you need to make sure that you have that in place so that way you can plug in, still produce, and then your agents that's going through the training already, hopefully they'll start producing, and then eventually you can start scaling back your own production, because now you can focus more on like recruiting, more the one-on-one stuff. Like we still do one-on-ones, meetings with our agents.
Yeah.
But definitely something that, I think any team leader, if they want to do it, they need to look into partnering with someone, whether it's like with an organization like us or some other organization, or buying coaching programs to basically plug their agents into that allows them to be hands-off with the training.
I think that's so great, and definitely a great way to look at things in order to help those who want to grow, because again, so many people get into it and they don't realize what all it takes to be able to do that. And I've seen a lot of people struggle. I've seen a lot of people succeed in it, but it's definitely a conversation I don't think that they've had before they figure out what all is needed on the back end. So, okay, last question for you is, what is next for you and your team, and how do you see EXP and the Wolfpack helping you continue to scale and duplicate your success?
Yeah, so obviously the goal for our team is to continue to grow, right? And so that's obviously the goal. And then, from a production standpoint, if you're just looking strictly at numbers, my goal is always to double, so my goal for next year is to sell 400 homes with like 160 million transactions. So that's my personal goal from a team standpoint. But from an individual standpoint, as far as what my goal is, my next goal is to basically bring on team leaders and train them on how to go ahead and grow their team, And so that's one of the things that gets me excited, is being able to help other team leaders. I've talked to a lot of team leaders recently. Even people within EXP that are maybe in the wrong upline, they don't have the same type of training coaching that we provide, who are struggling, because they're a newer team, they don't know what to do, they keep making the same mistakes. Those mistakes become very costly, so it's costing them a lot of money. And so I think my next goal is to really help team leaders grow their teams as well too, and kind of give them the exact same blueprint that I created to grow our team as quick as we did, to help them grow their team as well.
Oh, that's amazing. That is so great. Well, Scott, your story is definitely a blueprint of leadership, and it's done right. You've had consistent growth, no ego, and real commitment to helping agents win. So, for those of you watching, if this interview fired you up, drop your favorite takeaway in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories like this one. And if you're ready to scale your business, build systems that actually work, and join a community where collaboration creates freedom, click the link in the description to book a call with Scott and I, and let's help you build a team and a life that scales. Thank you so much, Scott, for being here. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Bye, guys.